What would you do if you discovered that everything we've been taught about how the universe moves is just a convenient lie? What if you found out that the key to the stars isn't in heavy, expensive and noisy rockets, but in a field of physics that the official world pretends doesn't exist? Amy Catherine Eskridge was a genius, a disruptor. In June 2022, she was found dead. The official version presented by the authorities was that she had taken her own life. But for those who know the secrets hidden within the laboratories of Huntsville, Amy's name is not just a tragic statistic in a police report. It is a silent yet deafening warning that certain frontiers of knowledge must not be crossed by those who refuse to accept silence. Huntsville, Alabama. They call it the Rocket City. It is the beating heart of the American aerospace industry and the United States Space Defense Command. It was here that Wernher von Braun's legacy consolidated mastery over the skies, transforming cutting-edge technology into a space exploration empire. But Huntsville has a dark side, an underworld of defense contractors, secret budgets, the so-called black budgets, and technologies that traditional academic physics labels as impossible. It was in this setting, under the shadow of military engineering giants, that Dr. Ning Li promised the world the discovery of anti-gravity in the 90s, before completely disappearing from the public map, leaving no trace behind. And it was exactly here that decades later, Amy Eskridge decided to finish what had been started. She wasn't just studying space. She was learning to manipulate it in ways that defy our understanding of time and matter. But in a city where silence is the most valuable currency for maintaining multi-billion-dollar government contracts, Amy decided it was time to speak out. Amy was not what the system expected. Raised under a homeschooling regime, she escaped the intellectual indoctrination of traditional universities. She learned to think for herself, far from the shackles that tell young scientists what they can or cannot research to be accepted in the market. While other students were memorizing formulas to pass exams, Amy was questioning the very nature of mass, inertia, and gravity. She became the co-founder of the Coherent Matter Wave Group. Her goal wasn't just to get a job at a major government or corporate agency. She wanted to make the current concept of propulsion obsolete. Amy began mentioning terms that would put any intelligence sector on high alert: non-Newtonian propulsion, matter waves, and the enigmatic P45 and P52 protocols. In this video, we will dive deep into what Amy truly discovered and what she tried to expose to the world. We will analyze the evidence she left behind, the relentless persecution she publicly denounced before her life was cut short, and the disturbing truth about the temporal lineage programs she claimed to have accessed. Amy Eskridge's story is the real account of what happens when a brilliant mind encounters information that the system never intended to reveal to the public. This story you are going to hear today is a puzzle of fragmented information, accounts from those who were around her, and data that many would wish remained forgotten. If you seek the truth behind the best-kept secrets of modern science, I ask you to join our community. Leave your like now to help this content break through the algorithm's barriers. Subscribe to the channel to follow our future investigations into the unknown, and hit the bell icon. What we are going to reveal throughout this video is the reason why this subject is considered so sensitive and, for some, extremely dangerous. Are you ready for what comes next? Then let's deeply understand the science and the mysteries that may have cost Amy Eskridge her life. To understand how such a brilliant mind ends her journey under such nebulous circumstances, one must first understand the nature of the anomaly that Amy Catherine Eskridge represented. She wasn't just another researcher in the vast military-industrial complex of Huntsville. She was what the system usually calls a calculation error. And this error began long before she ever set foot in an official laboratory. Most of the great geniuses who changed the course of history share a fundamental trait. At some point, they broke away from conventional thinking. In Amy's case, this break was institutionalized from an early age. Educated under a homeschooling regime, she grew up in an environment where curiosity was not stifled by standardized curricula or by teachers who only teach what is acceptable according to state-approved textbooks. While most young people her age were busy memorizing historical dates to pass multiple-choice tests, Amy was immersed in treatises on theoretical physics and classical music. She developed an understanding of reality that was, at once, purely mathematical and deeply intuitive. This intellectual freedom was her greatest asset, but it would also become her greatest vulnerability. Without the shackles and filters of traditional academia, Amy never learned to fear ideas considered heretical or dangerous to the financial balance of the great powers. For her, physics was not a ladder to a corporate career. It was an obsessive search for fundamental truths about how energy and matter actually interact. People who knew her during this formative phase describe a young woman with an electric capacity for reasoning, someone who could connect concepts of musical harmony with quantum mechanics in a way that left veterans from NASA and the Department of Defense perplexed. When Amy finally entered the professional scene in Huntsville, she was already what we might call a complete polymath. She wasn't just a physicist. She was an artist of propulsion. By founding the Coherent Matter Wave Group, she surrounded herself with minds who shared her vision of a science without the chains of military secrecy. Laboratory colleagues report that Amy had an almost supernatural ability to visualize gravitational fields. While other scientists needed supercomputers to simulate particle interactions, Amy seemed to see the patterns in the fabric of space-time. She treated gravity not as a mystical and immutable force, but as a variable that could be adjusted, provided you knew where to touch the structure of the vacuum. But Huntsville is a city built on contrasts and secrets. On one side, the glow of public aerospace innovation. On the other, the old boys club of engineers, intelligence officers and bureaucrats who maintain a tight grip on which technology can advance and which must be buried in the name of national security. Amy, with her youth, her financial independence, and her refusal to accept dogmas, quickly found herself in the middle of this crossfire. She was bringing solutions that could make trillions of dollars in fossil fuel infrastructure and chemical engines obsolete in a matter of years. What she was proposing with her research on matter waves was not just an incremental improvement. It was a total paradigm shift. In a place where progress is measured by billion-dollar defense contracts, proposing clean energy and massless propulsion is the same as declaring war against the profits of the military-industrial complex. Those close to her began to notice that the initial admiration for the prodigy girl began to give way to silent institutional pressure. Invitations to conferences began to be withdrawn. Investors suddenly lost interest. Doors that were once open now required credentials that Amy refused to obtain if it meant handing over the intellectual property of her discoveries to the government. Amy, however, did not back down. She firmly believed that science belonged to humanity, not to for-profit corporations. Her stubbornness in keeping her work transparent and out of the clutches of military exclusivity contracts was what began to paint the target on her back. She was too brilliant to be ignored, but too independent to be controlled. In the dark world of secret budgets, if a mind like Amy's cannot be bought or silenced by bribery, it begins to be treated as a security risk. Amy's life ceased to be a trajectory of scientific success and became an account of survival. She began to realize that her intellectual freedom was being monitored by eyes that did not seek the progress of the human species, but rather the maintenance of a technological monopoly that dates back to decades of hidden secrets. She had stumbled upon something that went far beyond propulsion. She had touched the structure that maintains global power, and the system began to react the only way it knows how, by trying to isolate the anomaly. If you are following this investigation and feel that Amy's story deserves to be known, your participation is fundamental. Leave your like now to ensure this video isn't buried by the algorithm, and subscribe to strengthen this channel's search for the truth. What Amy discovered in the Huntsville labs was not just a new way to fly. She believed she had accessed information about programs that operate outside our common perception of time, the enigmatic P45 and P52 protocols. And it is about this forbidden science that we need to speak now. To the outside world, Amy Eskridge was an engineer working on advanced propulsion. But within the walls of her Huntsville laboratory, she was decoding what many call forbidden physics. Amy's work was based on the concept of coherent matter waves. To understand what this means, imagine that the space around us is not an absolute vacuum, but the surface of a calm lake. Traditional physics tries to move a boat using oars or noisy engines, that is, rocket propulsion. Amy discovered that if you vibrate the water at the right frequency, the lake itself pushes the boat. She realized that the key to anti-gravity did not lie in the brute force of giant magnets or chemical explosions. The secret lay in harmonic resonance. Imagine a singer who hits a note so specific that it shatters a crystal glass. The singer didn't use physical force to break the glass. They used the correct frequency to make the glass molecules vibrate until they lost cohesion. Amy applied this same principle to space-time. She sought the musical note of the universe's own structure. By finding this resonance, an object's mass would cease to be an anchor and would start to float, as if the rules of gravity had been momentarily switched off for that object. This line of research was dangerous because it followed the trail of Dr. Ning Li, the scientist who claimed to have created a weight reduction device in Huntsville in the 90s, before vanishing without a trace. Amy didn't just replicate part of Ning Li's results. She moved forward on a path that led her to a disturbing discovery. She began to mention that her technology was the same used by intelligences already operating on Earth, identified by the codes P45 and P52. According to the reports and documents Amy analyzed, these acronyms did not refer to extraterrestrials from distant galaxies, but to something much closer and more terrifying, ourselves. Amy claimed that the P45s and P52s are lineages of human beings from the future, survivors of a global catastrophe that, according to this information, is about to happen in our current timeline. The P45 group would represent a lineage coming from about 45,000 years in the future. They would be the descendants of those who survived the catastrophe, but who, over millennia, lost their original emotional and genetic connection, becoming purely technological and biologically altered beings, what many today describe as the Greys. The P52 group, on the other hand, would come from a timeline 52,000 years ahead, a lineage that managed to preserve more of the original human essence. Amy detailed that some of these survivors do not live on other planets, but in the depths of Earth itself. These intraterrestrial beings would use the planet's caves and deep mantle as a refuge against the radiation and surface changes that devastated the future from which they came. What made Amy's work a national security risk was her perception that the United States government not only knew about this, but already possessed this time jump and intraterrestrial propulsion technology through the P47 protocol, which would be the military arm responsible for intercepting and hiding these advances. Amy believed that humanity was being kept in a technological prison powered by oil and coal, while the solutions to avoid the imminent disaster were kept under lock and key by groups that profit from controlling the timeline. By beginning to speak openly about the fact that the visitors are, in fact, our grandchildren coming from the future to try to correct or guarantee certain trajectories, Amy crossed the final red line. She stated that the current power system depends on our ignorance of what is to come. If we knew that the future has already happened and that the survivors are beneath our feet, The world's geopolitical structure would collapse in a single day. In the months leading up to her death, Amy felt that the temporal monitoring system had turned against her. She reported that it wasn't just black cars on the streets, but direct interference in her biology. She felt frequencies that prevented her from entering a state of deep sleep, a mental destabilization technique used to invalidate the testimony of anyone who gets too close to the truth. Amy was being disconnected from reality by those who hold control over the very frequencies she herself helped to uncover. What happens when you become a target of a system that possesses virtually infinite resources? For Amy Eskridge, the transition from brilliant scientist to person of interest did not happen overnight. It was a slow, calculated, and profoundly cruel process, known in intelligence circles as soft neutralization. When the system realized that Amy would not accept silence in exchange for funding, they initiated what many describe as gang stalking, a coordinated harassment aimed at destroying the victim's credibility and mental health before any definitive physical action. Amy began to document everything obsessively. On her social media, she started posting evidence that challenged any statistical coincidence. There were white cars, popular and discreet models, parked in front of her house at random times, only to drive off as soon as she picked up her phone to film. But the harassment crossed the boundary of surveillance and became physical in a way that few could endure. Amy began to share disturbing videos showing her hands and arms turning a bright shade of red, as if they were being cooked from the inside out. The most terrifying part was the pattern. She reported that this redness and the excruciating burning pain appeared specifically when she sat down to work on her propulsion calculations or on any data the system wanted to suppress. It was as if there were an invisible red line. If she tried to advance in the forbidden science, her own body was used as punishment. A scientist by training, Amy did not accept this as a delusion. She treated the situation as a physics experiment. In an act of desperation and genius, she decided to turn her home into an improvised Faraday cage. Amy built a physical barricade on her windows and doors, using materials capable of blocking or attenuating electromagnetic waves and radio frequencies. While filming the process, what happened was staggering. As soon as the last crack in the window was sealed with the protection, she showed the camera that the redness in her hands began to recede almost instantly. The burning stopped. To her, that was the absolute proof that it was not a skin disease or a psychosomatic outbreak, but a directed energy weapon coming from outside her property, piercing through walls and glass to hit her at her desk. In one of the most chilling records of this phase, Amy shows what appeared to be a mark left on her window glass. She described it as a kind of X-ray or a persistent thermal print, as if the equipment used to monitor her through the walls had left a physical signature on the material. It was visual evidence that the surveillance technology was not just watching her, but literally scanning her every move within the privacy of her home. Huntsville, the city she loved so much, had been transformed into a testing ground where she was the moving target. Amy's account of the drones hovering over her house also took on new dimensions. She wasn't talking about commercial models. She described silent objects capable of emitting frequencies that interacted with the home's electrical field, causing power spikes and equipment failures. Amy believed these objects were extensions of the very technology she was studying, devices, operating on the boundary between timelines and used to ensure her technical data was never transmitted. Outside of government control, inside her home, the harassment became intimate and psychological. Objects were moved, passwords were changed on devices that were disconnected from the internet, and her calculations on vacuum resonance appeared with subtle errors remotely inserted. This is the peak of institutional gaslighting, creating an environment where the victim begins to doubt their own perception of reality, isolating them from friends and family who, by not seeing what she sees, end up accepting the official narrative that the person is suffering a breakdown. Amy, however, was technically too lucid to fall into this trap. She knew that what she was living through was a containment protocol. She even mentioned that she was being used as a frequency guinea pig, where agencies took advantage of her sensitivity to calibrate weapons that would be used to suppress dissidents in the future. Amy found herself alone in a battle against invisible giants, frequently saying in her broadcasts, "If something happens to me, know that I didn't give up. I'm not sick. I'm just too close to a truth they cannot allow to be shared." This siege lasted for months, turning the life of one of the most promising minds of our generation into a constant nightmare of surveillance and physical pain. Amy was trapped between the world of public science, which ignored her, and the world of black budgets, which hunted her. She knew time was running out, not because she wanted to quit, but because the system was accelerating the final protocol. What happened next is the point where physical evidence and official versions enter a violent collision, leaving behind a trail of questions that the Huntsville government refuses, to this day, to answer. In June 2022, silence finally fell over Amy Eskridge's laboratory and home. But it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of an abrupt interruption. Amy was found dead, and at a speed that defies any serious investigative protocol for cases involving prior reports of harassment. The Huntsville authorities declared that she had taken her own life. The case was closed almost as quickly as the announcement was made. But it is precisely in this haste that the cracks in the official narrative begin to appear. For those who followed Amy's trajectory, the version of self-extinguishment sounds not only improbable, but technically inconsistent. Weeks earlier, Amy had sent messages and recorded videos stating categorically, "I am not suicidal. If something happens to me, investigate." She knew the system would try to use mental health as a smokescreen. Close friends and family reported that despite the extreme stress caused by electronic harassment and frequency weapons, Amy was more determined than ever to publish her findings. She wasn't acting like someone planning to give up. She was acting like a scientist who was about to deliver the final proof of a historic crime against humanity. The inconsistencies at the death scene are glaring. Reports circulating among researchers who had access to details of the case mentioned that there was no exhaustive ballistic forensics and that access to Amy's communication history in the days leading up to her death was severely limited. Why did a city that is the cradle of cutting-edge technology in the United States not apply maximum technical rigor to the death of one of its most brilliant minds? The answer may lie in the fact that if the investigation were deep, it would have to deal with the reports of gang stalking and the evidence of directed energy weapons that Amy had been presenting. For the Huntsville system, it was much more convenient to bury Amy as an unstable woman than to admit that an American citizen was being electronically tortured on American soil. Another point of extreme controversy is the fate of her work. Immediately after the confirmation of her death, Amy's accounts across various platforms began to be wiped. Videos where she showed the burns on her hands, the barricades on her windows, and the drones in her garden vanished or were archived in hard-to-reach places. Her computers and laboratory hard drives, which contained months of data on vacuum resonance and the P45 and P52 timelines, were seized. To this day, no one knows where the originals of the research Amy claimed were the solution to the global energy crisis are located. If the case was a simple, personal incident, why was the handling of her scientific data worthy of an international espionage incident? Amy Eskridge's death holds terrifying parallels with the fate of Dr. Ning Li and other scientists who dared to touch the holy grail of propulsion physics. The pattern is always the same: the discovery of a disruptive technology followed by a period of social isolation, reports of harassment that no one in power takes seriously, and finally, a tragic outcome that serves to discredit all previous work. The system doesn't just kill the body, It kills the reputation and the very idea that science was real. By labeling Amy as someone who lost touch with reality, the Huntsville military-industrial complex ensures that no other young scientist dares to follow the same path. But the truth has a peculiar way of resisting erosion. Even with the effort to erase her legacy, Amy's story has become a beacon for those investigating the control protocols of our timeline. The questions she left unanswered continue to float over Rocket City. If Amy was wrong, why did they need so much force to silence her? If frequency weapons don't exist, what caused the marks on her skin and her windows? And most importantly, if the P-45s and P-52s are just delusions, why does the government spend billions of dollars in black budgets to monitor the very space she claimed these beings inhabit? Amy Catherine Eskridge may be gone, but what she unearthed in Huntsville cannot be buried again. She showed us that the final frontier is not outer space, but our own perception of what is possible and who truly holds the keys to our future. While the world looks at NASA's noisy rockets, Amy's sacrifice reminds us to look at the silence, for it is there, between the forbidden frequencies and the shadows of the timelines, that the true history of humanity is being written, far from our eyes, but no longer far from our consciousness. As we close this account, the invitation remains for you not to accept only the official version of the story. Science must be free, and the memory of minds like Amy's must be protected. If this dive into the hidden truth of Huntsville resonated with you, check your subscription and share this video. In a world of imposed silences, your voice is the only tool that prevents names like Amy Eskridge's from being forgotten. The truth is out there, but sometimes it is hidden just below the surface, waiting for someone brave enough to tune in to the right frequency. The death of Amy Eskridge, although shocking, is not an isolated event. To understand the magnitude of what is happening in Huntsville and other intelligence centers across the United States, we need to take a step back and observe the complete mosaic. There is a silent pattern, an epidemic of disappearances, sudden deaths, and inexplicable career endings that specifically targets one group: scientists working with non-conventional propulsion and vacuum energy. When we connect the dots, we realize that Amy was just the latest piece on a chessboard that has been played for decades. Amy's case inevitably leads us back to Dr. Ning Li. In the 90s, Ning Li was the star of Huntsville. She published peer-reviewed articles on how rotating superconducting disks could interact with the Earth's gravitational field. She was not a marginal theorist. She was respected and well-funded. However, after announcing she was close to creating a prototype capable of lifting tons without fuel, she simply vanished. For years, the official rumor was that she had returned to China. But later, independent investigations suggested she remained in the United States, possibly working in a golden confinement under maximum security contracts. Amy's work was the direct continuation of Ning Li's, and the fate of both seems to have been sealed by the same interest group. But the list grows longer. We need to talk about scientists like Dr. Eugene Podkletnov, whose research on gravitational shielding was publicly ridiculed by NASA. While behind the scenes, Boeing and other defense giants conducted Project Grasp to try and replicate his results in secret. The pattern is always the same. Science is publicly discredited while being privately confiscated. When a scientist like Amy refuses to hand over her research and decides to make it public, the protocol shifts from marginalization to neutralization. Amy frequently mentioned that other laboratory colleagues in Huntsville were under heavy surveillance. She spoke of an atmosphere of fear where brilliant researchers are forced to sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, so restrictive that they lose the rights even over their own thoughts. Those who try to break this silence, as Amy did, end up meeting tragic ends that are quickly labeled as mental health issues or voluntary decisions against their own lives. But how can we explain that so many physics geniuses, people trained in logic and the scientific method, suddenly decide to give up everything at the peak of their discoveries? This scientific cleanup serves a dual purpose. First, it ensures that technologies that could free humanity from oil dependence remain under military control, used only in secret projects that the public cannot even imagine exist. Second, it creates a scorched earth effect in academia. Young physicists see what happened to Amy Eskridge and learn the lesson. If you want a long and secure career, do not touch gravity. Do not question thermodynamics. Stay inside the box that the system built for you. The investigation into Amy's death reveals that she was in contact with other researchers who also reported the gang-stalking phenomenon. There is a network of scientists operating in the shadows, exchanging information on what they call containment technologies. They believe the military-industrial complex has developed a global monitoring system that uses artificial intelligence to detect, in real time, when anyone on the planet gets close to a discovery that could threaten the control of the timelines. Amy was detected by this system. Her posts, her calculations sent by email, her phone conversations, everything was processed by algorithms that determined she was a level 4 threat. What we are seeing is not just a local conspiracy in Huntsville. It is global knowledge management. The disappearance and death of scientists like Amy Eskridge are proof that we live in a world where the ignorance of the masses is a valuable commodity. While we celebrate small advances in the efficiency of solar panels or lithium batteries, the true technological revolution is being kept in deep bunkers, guarded by security protocols that do not hesitate to eliminate anyone who tries to turn on the light for the rest of us. Amy tried to be that light, and the price she paid was definitive silencing. If you thought the persecution against Amy Eskridge was motivated solely by money or the control of energy patents, you haven't seen the full picture yet. Amy believed she had accessed information suggesting that our present is being manipulated by forces that already know our future. Through communications she described as temporal data leaks, Amy began to assemble what would be the final warning for our civilization. She claimed that the P45 and P52 lineages are not here just to observe us. They are in a silent battle to decide which version of humanity will prevail after what she called the Great Event. According to the notes Amy left and the encrypted messages sent to trusted researchers, humanity is approaching a geophysical and technological breaking point. She spoke of a catastrophe that would not come from space, but from Earth's own core and our disastrous interaction with the planet's electromagnetic field. Amy theorized that the massive use of certain military frequencies and the reckless exploitation of resources were destabilizing Earth's natural resonance. For the P45 group, that hyper-technological and emotionally cold version of ourselves coming from 45,000 years in the future, this catastrophe is necessary. It is the event that allows them to emerge as the dominant lineage, even at the cost of billions of lives and the loss of our original biological humanity. Amy described how the United States government, through Huntsville, made a Faustian pact with these visitors from the future. In exchange for propulsion technology and population control, the system would be helping to ensure that the P45 timeline comes to fruition. Amy, on the other hand, believed that the matter wave technology she was developing could be used to mitigate the effects of this catastrophe. She believed we could stabilize the planet's resonance and open a path for the P52 lineage, which represents a future where humanity maintains its connection with the Earth and its spiritual and biological essence. This is why Amy's messages were so dangerous. She wasn't just delivering blueprints for a fuel-less engine. She was trying to sabotage the destiny that had been planned for us by a future intelligence. She claimed that the P47 group, the military monitoring us today, serves as the guardians of the timeline. Their job is to ensure that no one changes the course of events that will lead to the rise of total control in the future. When Amy began talking about the intraterrestrials, the survivors who already inhabit the depths of the earth and who would be the ancestors of these future lineages. She was, revealing that our home is already occupied by those waiting. For our fall on the surface, Amy left clues that the signal for the start of this great event would be an unprecedented increase in low-frequency wave activity and aggressive monitoring of all dissident minds. She said that the gang-stalking system and the directed energy weapons she suffered on her own skin were, in fact, tuning tools. They were trying to ensure that her consciousness did not interfere with humanity's collective frequency during the transition. She wrote in one of her last emails, "They aren't afraid of me building a machine. They are afraid of me changing the frequency of what you call reality." This revelation changes everything we think about her case. Amy Eskridge was not the victim of a common crime or a simple corporate conspiracy. She was an insurgent in a temporal war. Her barricades on the windows were not just to protect her skin from burns. They were a desperate attempt to keep her mind free from the noise of a timeline that wants to consume us. The fact that she mentioned one of these groups lives underground suggests that the infrastructure for our post-future is already in place, waiting only for the moment when the surface becomes uninhabitable. The question that remains, and which Amy tried to answer until her last breath, is, do we have the power to change this frequency? Or are we just following a script that has already been written by those who survived our own end? Amy believed in the first option. She believed that knowledge was the only variable capable of breaking the determinism of these future lineages. By silencing her, the system did not just erase a scientist. They tried to erase an emergency exit for the entire human race. Now what we have left are the fragments of her courage, asking us to pay attention to the signs before the frequency changes forever. One of the most unsettling questions surrounding Amy Eskridge's death is, where is the data? For a scientist who documented every step of her discoveries, the near-total disappearance of her hard drives and laboratory notebooks is evidence in itself. Amy did not trust commercial cloud servers. She knew that any data touching the network would be immediately intercepted by the P47 protocol. Because of this, she maintained what she called ghost files, physical copies and encrypted drives hidden away from her residence. Reports from close sources indicate that shortly before her death, Amy desperately tried to send these files to investigative journalists and other independent physicists. Some of these people confirm having received fragments of equations that seem to describe the manipulation of the gravitational constant through matter-wave resonance. However, fear is a powerful silencing agent. Many of these recipients were visited by federal agents just hours after the confirmation of Amy's passing, having their equipment seized under the justification of national security. What Amy discovered was so sensitive that possessing a copy of her work became an implicit crime. But beyond papers and codes, there are accounts from those who saw Amy's science in action. People who frequented the laboratory of the Coherent Matter Wave Group describe experiments that defied logic. A former collaborator, who prefers anonymity for obvious reasons, reported seeing small disks of superconducting material that, when subjected to the exact harmonic frequency discovered by Amy, not only lost weight but seemed to blur out of reality. It was as if the object were trying to exist in two places at the same time, a clear visual signature that she had touched the interface between timelines. Amy claimed that this blurring effect was proof that matter could be moved through what she called phase slits. She said that the P45 and P52 groups use this exact technique to enter and exit our perception without leaving thermal traces or radar signatures. When she managed to replicate this on a laboratory scale, she ceased to be a theorist and became an operational threat. She had broken the monopoly on invisibility and trans-dimensional transport that black-budget agencies had guarded since the 1940s. The effort to erase this evidence was monumental. After June 2022, it wasn't just Amy's videos that vanished. The laboratory itself was dismantled with military efficiency. High-precision measuring equipment and resonance prototypes were hauled away in unmarked trucks. Neighbors reported that the operation lasted all night and that the site was left completely empty, as if it had never housed some of the most advanced research of the 21st century. The order was clear. No physical trace could remain to validate the allegations she made during her life. However, Amy was cautious. She mentioned in her broadcasts that she had left seeds of information planted within the very structure of the internet, data hidden inside image files through steganography and messages within cryptocurrency transaction blocks. She believed that even if her body and her lab were silenced, the frequency of truth would continue to echo. She said the mathematics she developed was a universal language that, once understood by another prepared mind, could not be unlearned. The existence of these files and accounts proves that Amy was not suffering from psychosis. Someone suffering from delusions does not build prototypes that make matter vibrate out of temporal phase. Someone losing their mind does not attract the immediate interest of technological cleanup squads. Amy Catherine Eskridge was eliminated because her science worked. And if it worked, everything she said about the P-45s, the P-52s, and the imminent catastrophe ceases to be a conspiracy theory and becomes an intelligence report on our immediate future. What she saw through her resonance lenses was a destiny the system wants us to accept with our eyes closed, and the disappearance of her evidence is the final veil they are trying to pull over our vision. Amy Eskridge's case is the tip of an iceberg that extends into much deeper and more dangerous waters. In recent years, a grim statistic has begun to emerge. About 11 American scientists, all working in sensitive areas of propulsion, quantum energy, and plasma physics, have disappeared or died under circumstances that defy logic. What unites these names is not just their brilliance, but the fact that many of them tried to break the barrier of institutional silence, even sending letters and petitions directly to the highest levels of government, including former President Donald Trump, demanding the declassification of technologies that could save the planet. These scientists believed in the existence of a parallel government, a technological deep state that withholds advancements, capable of making humanity independent of fossil fuels. They questioned why the Space Force and defense programs seem to be decades ahead of what is taught in universities. But the silencing knows no borders. While the FBI and CIA dealt with American dissidents, the same phenomenon was repeating itself in China and Russia. Chinese scientists linked to superconductor physics and Russian researchers specializing in vacuum energy began falling from windows, vanishing from maximum security laboratories, or falling victim to sudden cardiac arrests at the age of 40. We are witnessing a true modern-day witch hunt, a holocaust of geniuses. And to understand the mechanics of this silencing, perhaps pop culture has given us the key through predictive fiction. In the series and book The Three-Body Problem, we are introduced to an external force that tries to impede Earth's technological progress by locking our science and eliminating our best physicists. In fiction, they are aliens. In Amy Eskridge's reality, the enemy may be the P-47 protocol, a human or post-human group using Earth as a controlled laboratory. They don't want us to level up. They need our science to remain stagnant so that the future P-45 and P-52 lineages can guarantee their own existence. Amy Eskridge knew that official science is a distraction. While we discuss generative artificial intelligence and rockets that land themselves, the true physics, the kind that allows for temporal jumps and infinite energy, is treated as a state secret greater than the atomic bomb itself. Amy was one of the few who realized that the series of scientist deaths was not a coincidence, but a timeline cleanup. If a scientist in Russia discovers how to manipulate gravity and another in the US discovers how to extract energy from the quantum vacuum, the global control system collapses. Because of this, the cooperation between the intelligence agencies of the great powers, which seem to be enemies on the surface, is total when it comes to technological silencing. The question Amy left in the air is disturbing. Is humanity being purposely kept in a technological infancy? Just like in the aforementioned work of fiction, where intelligent particles called sophons monitor and sabotage every human advancement. Amy felt her hands burning and her windows marked by frequencies whenever she got close to the truth. They weren't aliens from another star system. They were the guardians of our own future, operating from intraterrestrial bases and secret facilities in Huntsville, ensuring that the human cattle do not learn how to open the door of their own cage. This network of disappearances suggests the existence of a global blacklist. If you are too brilliant, if you are too independent, and if you decide that your knowledge belongs to the people and not to the Pentagon or the Communist Party, you enter the radar. Amy Eskridge was the most vibrant voice of this recent resistance, and her death serves as a warning to the other 10 scientists on the list who are still out there, hidden in laboratories or living under false identities. They know that the real-life three-body problem is not a war against invaders, but a war against time. A war to decide whether we will be the technological slaves of the P45 group or the free ancestors of the P52 lineage when we connect Amy's sacrifice with the disappearance of Russian and Chinese geniuses. What we see is a global scientific dictatorship. Wherever the light of true discovery tries to shine, the shadows of the black budgets act with surgical precision. And while the general public is distracted by entertainment and staged geopolitical conflicts, the intellectual elite of our species is being silently eliminated one by one, until no one is left capable of questioning the script of the catastrophe to come. Amy saw the script. She tried to tear out the pages, and for that, she became the most tragic chapter in this chronicle of silencing. While official science tries to convince us that Amy Eskridge's death was an isolated event and that the future is a straight line of slow technological progress, the actions of those who hold true power tell a very different story. If you want to know where the world is headed, don't look at the speeches of politicians. Look at where billionaires are putting their money. In recent years, we have witnessed an unprecedented race, the construction of luxury bunkers in remote locations like New Zealand and the depths of Hawaii. Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and other titans of Silicon Valley are investing billions in self-sustaining underground complexes, equipped with air filtration technology, independent energy production, and security systems that rival military bases. The question Amy Eskridge left echoing in Huntsville finds a terrifying visual answer here. If the future is bright and progress is guaranteed, why are the architects of our present preparing to live underground? They know. They have access to the reports Amy tried to make public. They know the P45 and P52 protocols and understand that the catastrophe these future lineages are trying to manage is not a possibility, but a countdown. While the masses are kept distracted by manufactured crises, the elite is building its own intraterrestrial arc, mirroring exactly the trajectory Amy described regarding the survivors of the future. They aren't just building shelters. They are trying to buy a place in the timeline that will remain after the great event. The story of Amy Catherine Eskridge teaches us that truth is the most dangerous commodity on the market. She did not die from a miscalculation, but from a calculation of conscience. She possessed what we can call the unseen key. In a world of absolute locks, whoever holds the key to the doors of time and free energy automatically becomes an enemy of the system. Amy tried to hand that key to us so we could open our own exit from this prison of scarcity and control. But the hand that holds the key is always the first to be hit by the hammer of silence. Looking at Huntsville today, we see a city that continues to send rockets into the sky, but hides its greatest secrets beneath the soil. Amy Eskridge is now part of a pantheon of scientific martyrs who dared to look beyond the veil. Her legacy is not in a grave, but in the vibration of every mind that awakens to the fact that reality is far more plastic and manipulable than we are allowed to believe. The unseen key was not destroyed with her. It was fragmented and scattered through every video, every document, and every allegation that survived the digital purge. This video is our contribution to ensuring the frequency of truth continues to resonate. We cannot allow Amy's sacrifice to be just another footnote in a dusty police report. We must be the guardians of the memory of those who gave their lives so that we could have a glimpse of tomorrow. Amy's forbidden science is our reminder that the future is not written in stone, but in waves, and we still have the capacity to tune into the correct frequency before the signal is cut forever. We have reached the end of this story, but the search for truth on our channel is far from over. Amy's story is just one of the many keys they have tried to hide from you. The system is vast, but human curiosity is infinite. And now, we want to hear from you, who have followed us until this final moment of revelation. Who is the next important name in our history that you feel they tried to erase? Which scientist, inventor, or visionary was swept under the rug of black budgets that you want us to bring to light here on the channel? Leave your suggestion in the comments. We will continue to turn the key, opening the doors they swore to keep locked. Thank you for seeking the truth with us. Remember, in a world of shadows, information is the only light they cannot put out. See you in the next investigation.